But if you have your copy of God's Word and would like to turn with me, we are in the book of John, chapter 8, starting in verse 31. If you don't have a Bible, we can get one for you. There's also some on the top of the soda cooler that you can just take. But while you're turning there, 4 quick questions to catch us all up to speed. If you've been here the last couple weeks, that's great. If you haven't, I want us all to be on the same page as far as just like what we're talking about, why I am is written on the screen and all that good stuff. First up, who or what are we talking about in this series? Simple question. Probably the most like church answer in the world. Jesus, God. Yes, that's correct. The series is entitled I Am. It actually, that name comes from Exodus 3:14, when basically Moses has to go in front of Pharaoh and be like, hey, this is the God who sent me. I know that you may not follow this guy, but this is the real God who sent me. And Moses is like, what should I say that your name is? And he says to tell him, I Am has sent me. And we're going to talk about that name here in a little bit. But we're just looking at 8 statements that Jesus makes in one book to describe himself. And I think if God himself is describing who he is, that it's worth paying attention to. Second, what is the goal in this series? Yes, Maddie. To establish and find the answer to the question, who is God? Goal of this series to answer the question, who is God? And I think this is a massively important question. Like, if we can't answer the question, who is God, why are we even coming here? If we're devoting our entire lives to following one true God, shouldn't we want to know who he is? I feel like it's a fair question to ask. Third, what can anyone tell me about John, about the author or the book itself? Just about John. If you can't tell me anything, that's okay. But if anybody remembers anything that we've established about John, Naomi remembers something. John wrote the book of John. Yeah, we do not know that, but that is the running theory. Like, most people think that it is John. So yes, Naomi, you have a second one. Yeah, him and Jesus were really tight. They were like best friends. Caden has something. He is faster than Peter. That's my favorite detail that he includes in his own book. Yeah, anybody else? Hand raise. Yes.
Back to the theory about John writing the book of John is, it was even recorded in the Bible, he names himself as the disciple.
Beloved disciple. Yeah, he calls himself the beloved disciple. That is absolutely right. And even says at the end of the book that this beloved disciple wrote that book. So yeah, that's good. Everything that I had written down, he labels himself the beloved disciple, which we get it. You and Jesus are tight. You don't have to keep reminding us. He and Jesus hang out. He is at the cross. When Jesus is dying, he trusts him to take care of his mom. He outlives the other disciples. He wrote this book. And yes, Caden, he is faster than Peter. He actually says that he ran to the tomb faster than Peter. And fourth, last question, what is John's goal in writing this book about his best friend? Anybody know? It's one word. Yes, Maddie. Belief, yes. And belief is like a word that we use very differently a lot of the times, but this belief is the kind of belief that actually puts that belief into action. Like, yes, I believe what you said, now I'm going to do something with it. And he establishes that in chapter 20, verse 31. He says, I wrote this so that you come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. And this belief is not just knowing. Knowing something and believing it are two totally different things. I can know that LeBron James could jump over someone and dunk a basketball. Like, I can know that. I can say, like, yes, that is information that I agree with. But believing that would be standing there while he jumps over me and does so. That's me saying, hey, LeBron James, I may not like you very much. We may not see eye to eye on a lot of things. I will root against you actively. But if I believe that you can jump over somebody and dunk a basketball, I'm going to stand here and do it. That's actually putting my belief into action. I can know that learning from God's word is important, but believing it would mean paying attention when I have the opportunity to learn from it and also reading from it myself. So this is John's goal in writing this book. He says, when you, as readers, right now in October of 2020, when you read what I've written down, the things about my best friend and what he did and said 2,000 plus years ago, my goal is not for you to just agree with it, but believe in him. To not just say, wow, those are cool things that Jesus said, but to live as if what he said then matters today. Don't read these like this is just a collection of stories, because he wants us to read this as if Jesus knew you were going to hear this today and wants you to live out what he teaches. And we've got to especially keep that in mind for today, because he makes his biggest statement yet. Week 1, he said basically, I am the bread of life. I am everything that you need. You're not going to face anything in life that I can't give you what you need. Week 2, last week, he said that he is the light of the world. I disintegrate darkness. I can overcome anything. This week, he says 2 simple words, written right in the middle. I am. That's his entire sentence. He says, I am. And we pick up right where we left off last week and read some of Jesus' coolest dialogue in the entire Bible. And it's a good chunk of Bible. It's everything that's circled in blue here. And we're about to start reading in verse 31 of chapter 8. And this is right after Jesus said, I am the light of the world, and people started believing in him, and we see something really cool start to happen. This is right after people said that they started believing in Jesus, and then we pick up in verse 31. And so Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, if you abide in my word, and you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. This is what you're going to do if you are actually believing in me. You are going to abide in this truth that I'm giving you. They answered him, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How can you say that you will become free? What are we going to become free from? I'm not chained to anything. Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. He's saying you're either a slave to me, I am either your master, or something else is. And it's a very interesting concept. Jesus says the slave does not remain in the house forever, but the son remains forever. Eventually, if you are submitting your life and letting something else be your master, you're eventually going to die along with that. But Jesus is saying, I am the son, and I am going to remain forever. So if you submit yourself to me, you will also remain forever. So if the son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Verse 37, I know that you are offspring of Abraham. This is not new information to me, yet you seek to kill me because my words find no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my father, and you do what you have heard from your father, implying that they don't have the same father. Verse 39, they answered him, but Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, Abraham followed God. You would be doing the works Abraham did. But now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. Verse 41, you are doing the works your father did. They said to him, we are not born of sexual immorality. We have one father, even God. Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I came from God, and I am here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. Hop down to verse 48. This is where we get what we're talking about tonight. The Jews answered him, are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan and have a demon? They're just insulting him at this point. Jesus answered, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. Verse 52, then the Jews said to him, now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, as did the prophets, yet you say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death. Are you greater than Abraham, our father, who died? And the prophets died. Who do you make yourself out to be? Every good person in the Bible that we've learned from and our ancestors, they died. So you're saying that they didn't follow God? And Jesus answered, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. If you were to say that if I were to say that I don't know him, I would be a liar, like you are. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet 50 years old. Abraham existed hundreds and hundreds of years ago. You're not even 50 years old, Jesus. How did you see Abraham? Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you. He says truly, truly twice, just in case you didn't hear him the first time. Before Abraham was, I am. Sounds very grammatically incorrect, but that's what Jesus says. Verse 59, last verse. So they picked up stones to throw at him. but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, which that's low-key like a miracle at the very end there, because he was in a crowd of people and Jesus just disappears somehow without being killed. But we've got 4 things to learn from this. None of them are super mind-blowing, but that's kind of the point. The point is that we may believe and live out what Jesus is teaching. First thing, I am means just that. Very simple idea. Verse 58, Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." And I said that sounds grammatically incorrect, because if any of us said that, that would be incorrect. It would be, before Abraham was, I was, right? Because we didn't exist before Abraham. But honestly, I think it's pretty simple. It may sound really confusing to say, back before your great-great-grandfather was alive, I am. That's what Jesus is saying. But think about, what does I am mean? It means I currently am the same as I always have been and always will be. If I were to get like a phone call from my brother right now, and I said, "Hey, not right now, I am teaching," he would know, what would he know from that? I am teaching right now, currently. I am currently teaching. He would know that right here, right now, in this very moment, I am teaching. In about 15 or 20 minutes, if I called him back and said, "Yeah, I was teaching," what would he know from that? Not teaching anymore. I said none of this is mind-blowing, but he would know that I'm no longer teaching. What I was claiming to have been doing is now complete. I am now done. I no longer am teaching. I was teaching. I'm just giving you a lesson in grammar right now, but this is what Jesus is getting at right here in this passage. He's saying, just as I exist now is exactly how I existed when Abraham was alive. I still exist the same exact way right here and now. Jesus is saying, at some point in history, before Abraham was born, his like great-great-grandfather or whatever looked ahead and said, Abraham is going to be one day. Abraham didn't exist yet. Today, when we read about Abraham, we said that he did exist because he existed in the past. He was alive. Abraham's life had a beginning and end, just like everything that we know and are familiar with. This service begins every week at 6:30. It ends at 8 p.m. You begin middle school the first day you start 6th grade, and you end that last day of 8th grade when you walk off of campus. That's when it ends. My small group leader, Wayne Spencer, has a Snapchat streak with his wife. As of today, I asked him, 1,366 days long Snapchat streak with his wife, which is incredible. That means that streak began like 3.76 years ago, and that someday, likely a long time from now, it's going to end. It may be a way from now, and it may not have happened yet, but it will end. But we will never say this about God. He is never going to be. He will never be somebody who was. He will always exist, and he always is. And I think this is cool. This may like hurt your brain a little bit, and it hurts my brain to say it. But anytime you read God say, I am, blah, 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 it will always be true. Like, because he hasn't changed. He hasn't grown to become somebody new. He didn't change from who he used to be. Anytime God says, I am the bread of life, or I am blah, 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 that will always be true at the moment you're reading it. If 200 years from now, your great-great-great-great-granddaughter or whatever reads that verse, it is the same God, and he is the exact same way that he was when you read it. Everything that Jesus claims to be is something that God has already even revealed himself to be. When he said that he's the bread of life, God provided manna to his people and said, hey, this is bread, I'm going to keep you alive with it. When he said, I am the light of the world, in the Old Testament, God literally gave them a pillar of fire in times of darkness, and like spiritual darkness and even physical darkness, so that they could see. Which I think is crazy. How many of you guys have heard about that before? There was a pillar of fire. Emily's heard about it. Yeah, I think it's awesome. A pillar of fire. Jesus is not claiming to be anything different. He says, hey, God of the Old Testament gave you bread, I'm the bread of life. God of the Old Testament was the light of the world, I give you light. And he's claiming to be the same God. And that means that everything that you learn in this room right now, or every Sunday in your small groups, or every time you read the Bible by yourself, will always be true. And I think that's incredible. It's never going to be outdated information. You have to read the news every morning to get updated information. But anytime you read something about God, it will always be true. And I think that makes it a lot more worthwhile. Jesus is saying everything about me. Everything that I tell you I am and can do, that will always be true. Second thing, the I am is the title of one being. I want to teach you guys something very cool, at least I think, and interesting about reading the Bible. It is knowing the difference between 3 words I have, Lord, Lord, and Lord, which I don't know if you're great at enunciating, but those all enunciate the exact same because they look like the same word. But when you're reading the Bible, those are three very different words, and I think it's really cool. To make this easier to understand, think of the word dad. It means just a man who has children, or in some way, shape, or form. It means the same thing no matter how we use the word dad. We may write it down differently, we may say it differently, but it always means the same thing, but it can be expressed very differently. For example, I have a picture of my dad. That's my dad. That's Dave Kopsky, the man. That's a little Shane there on the right. But I wanted to show you this picture, not because of me, but because of his mullet and Dave's the man. But I am telling you this right now. That is the legendary David Anthony Kopsky. He's the man. That's the other pictures when we saw Creed 2. Not as good as Creed 1. But now you know, when you see that guy, that is my dad. When I say my dad, now you know who I'm talking about. That's him. But that's the man who raised me. But if I just said dad, the word dad, I could be talking about anybody. If I said, this dad went ahead and did that, I could be talking about Jason Irvin. I could be talking about any individual person. But if I said, my dad, you now know who I'm talking about. And if I said, like, dad to my brother or sister, they would know who I'm talking about because we have the same one. Well, at the same time, when I say Dave Kopsky, you know who I'm talking about, and you know that he's my dad. This seems a little redundant to say, but let's go over these words. Let's show these three different words. This literally can mean any dad, any person who has kids. This person, to me, means Dave Kopsky, but to each one of you, if somebody wrote this down, it's going to mean a different person every time. But it's indistinguishable. Anytime you read this name, we are talking about the same person. Now, that's not the perfect example. Somebody else could have that name. But you get the idea, right? Anytime you read this name, whatever your dad's name is, anytime you read his full name, you are clearly talking about one individual person. And this is kind of how we're supposed to understand when we read Lord in the Bible. Like the video we just watched mentioned, the name of the one true God is Yahweh. Or, yeah. It sounded like he was like coughing a couple times. But that is how it's pronounced. Yahweh. You know, every time you read Yahweh in the Bible, that is talking about the one true God. The thing is, though, that the name Yahweh is not written in our Bibles today. It is written Lord in all capital letters, like, I don't know where there it is, on the bottom. Lord in all capital letters. That is Yahweh every time you read it. And much like the word dad just means someone who has children, the word Lord is just a word to indicate somebody having a position of authority or power over somebody else. This means that the different ways we see the word Lord in the Bible means a lot of different things. Like this word literally just means anybody who's in charge of anybody else, anybody who has authority over anybody else. This one just means anybody's God that they follow, anybody's specific Lord to them. So this is like if you said, my dad, this is the equivalent of that. And even the Bible uses a different word. Anytime it refers to this, it could be whether it's a statue God or a real God, it uses the word Adonai. And that's what we talked about. It's a different word entirely. But when you see L-O-R-D in all caps, that is talking about Yahweh. It removes all doubt. This is the one and only legit true God. And to help you see this, Genesis chapter 18, it actually has examples of all three of these in Genesis chapter 18. In verses 1, 17, 19, and 20, it says, those are all 4 different verses. And each of these are talking about Yahweh. This is Dave Kopsky did this, indistinguishable. This is Yahweh did this or that. I didn't put the whole verse because you don't really need to see it. But then in like verse 3, Abraham is talking about something and he says, oh Lord, I don't know what that verse actually says. I'm going to go like this and hope it just goes to the next one. There it goes. Okay, he says, oh Lord, if I have found favor, blah, 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 blah. We know that Abraham in the Bible has the same God that we do, the real God. But this is just him saying, oh, my God, oh, Adonai. This is not talking about the one true God necessarily. That word is not. Does that make sense? This is like him saying, my God. Does that make sense? Not necessarily using his name. And then in verse 12, Sarah is talking, and she's like laughing that Abraham can have a kid because he's like 100 years old. And he says, she says in verse 12 right here, my Lord. Basically in that culture, husbands were a lot more authoritative over their wives, and she is basically calling Abraham her Lord. Abraham is not Yahweh. Abraham is not her God. He is just a person who has authority over her. So every time you read those words, they mean something different. And I went into that whole thing just to say, Jesus is not mixing his words here. He is not saying, I am Adonai. I am not your master. I am not somebody who just has authority over you. I am Yahweh. And you need to know that. He says, before Abraham was, I am. He makes that little coughing noise. Yeah, that's actually how Jesus sounded when he said it. He is saying, I am not claiming to be a good teacher or somebody's master or just the God of Abraham. I am the same God and only God who always and will always exist. And when I even read John 8:58, when he says, before Abraham was, I am, there's a little tiny note in my Bible, and it says, refer to Exodus 3:14, and that is the verse that we put up at the very beginning, where God literally says, I tell them that I am sent me. That is the same exact word. Third thing that we can learn, the I am is a powerful statement. We read again right at the end there, Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And what do? They pick up rocks to throw at him, but Jesus kind of performed a miracle and just ducked out of there. They were ready and willing to kill Jesus right then and there. Why? Because Jesus was claiming to be God. And if Jesus is God, if Jesus is this totally existent one and not just a man who existed for 33 years and did some good stuff, if he is the same person who created everything, then that has a lot of implications. It is the most powerful statement of all time. You can't top that. It even mentioned in that video that we watched, ancient Israelites didn't even feel comfortable saying this name out loud because they felt that the human tongue couldn't give proper reverence to God's name. They were like, I am so messed up as a human being, I should not even be allowed to say your name. That's how good you are, and that's how bad I am. They wrote it down Yahweh without any vowels in it, so YHWH, so that to ensure nobody would say it out loud. This may not be something that we need to do, but it is the heart that we need to have. Like, God, you are so much better than I am. I don't even deserve to say your name. How powerful do we believe Jesus actually is? Do we have this kind of reverence before him? When you bow your head and start praying, who do you actually picture in front of you? I think that's a very important thing. Do you envision the same God who created everything, who is capable of wiping out armies in the Old Testament with the snap of his finger? This is that same God. So when Jesus tells us to do something, he is saying, I have existed forever and I know better. And this reminds me of an incredible passage in John 18 and some of my old memories of being in the Easter pageant. I was in the Easter pageant one year. We no longer have the Easter pageant. But I played the bad thief one year. So there's Jesus in the middle, and he's dying on the cross, and everybody's focused on him. But I had one line in it, and I was the thief that was over here. And I basically wore like a diaper, and I was just like, had like fake blood and everything all up on me and whatnot. And I just opened up a seam, and I was like, are you not the Christ, the Messiah? If so, save yourself. And then the other thief on the good side is the one that goes to heaven, and he's like, don't talk to Jesus like that. That's a paraphrase. He doesn't actually say that. But he ends up going to heaven. I end up not going to heaven. All that to say, for the rest of the scene, I just got to hang there and pretend like I'm dying, and it's hard to pretend like you're dying because I've never done it before. But I'm just hanging there. And they always get like the biggest dudes to play Roman soldiers. Just like whoever the biggest dudes in Arnold are, you're going to be a Roman soldier. And two of my friends named Isaiah and Clayton were my Roman soldiers. They were the ones that are supposed to just like randomly just like stand there with their chest puffed out and sometimes just walk up to me and like fake punch me, and I have to go like, ugh. But a lot of times they would just like come up to me and like say like, hey, I just farted, or something like that. And I would laugh, so I had to be like, I'm dying. Like, I just had to like fake a grimace or whatever. But all that to say, they would get just the biggest people at Arnold to play these Roman soldiers. And this is Clayton, actually. And that's not Clayton. That's just a guy that we saw on the street one time that was wearing the same shirt as him. So I thought that was cool. But Clayton is like a huge dude. Clayton's like my height, but probably like 100 pounds heavier than me. He's a big dude, and he was one of my Roman soldiers. And every time I picture Roman soldiers, they are big dudes. And all that to say, John 18, we see Roman soldiers are in this story, and basically Jesus is about to be arrested and taken to the cross. John 18, verse 4. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen, saw these people coming to arrest him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him. Verse 5, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus said to him, "I am he." That's the same word. Yeah. Sounds like you're coughing. Yeah. Jesus said, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with him. Verse 6, when Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. I am picturing the biggest dudes in the world, just from Jesus saying 2 words, literally are knocked back and fall to the ground because of the power in that name. So Jesus asked them in verse 7, again, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." I bet they're probably expecting to be knocked over again. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go." This small section of verses describes so much of who Jesus is, just wrapped up in a few verses. Jesus has unimaginable, unlimited power. He literally said 2 words and giant dudes were knocked on their back. I probably wouldn't have arrested him at that point, but they went ahead and did it. But not only does he have power, he uses that power to deliver the powerless. That's what he does. There are Roman soldiers just coming all up on them, and there's nothing they can do about it. Peter tries to cut a guy's ear off, and Jesus is like, "Don't do that." He puts his ear back on because he's Jesus, and he is defending them. He says, "Hey, don't take them. Take me. I have unlimited power. I could stop you. I just proved it. I said 2 words, and you fell on your butt. But I'm not going to do that. Deliver them. I'll come with you." I love this. This is what God has always done. Said, I have power to do whatever I want, but I'm going to deliver the powerless. Has anyone ever read towards the beginning of the Bible when Jesus first introduces himself to his own people, the Israelites? Because I think it's the coolest thing in the world. It's in Deuteronomy 10. It's awesome. What we're about to read, God's like, you may be following me, you may feel like you already know me, but let me introduce myself. Let me tell you who this God you're following is. Let me tell you who really I am. We see Deuteronomy chapter 10, starting in verse 17. We get the obvious out of the way first. "For the Lord your God is God of gods, Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, the awesome God, who is not partial and takes no bribe." All right, we already know this. God is awesome. He's Lord of lords, King of kings, whatever. He is better than everybody else. But he says, I have power. I am better than everything else. He continues. Second thing, he says, I am focused on delivering the powerless. In verses 18 and 19, he executes justice for the fatherless, for the orphans, and the widow, and loves the sojourner. Sojourner is just somebody who doesn't belong and has to go from place to place because nobody accepts them, giving him food and clothing. Verse 19, he loves the sojourner. Therefore, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. He said, I took my people, were homeless. They had nowhere to call home, and I became their God. God doesn't just have power just to wield it over us. But he says, I am not just going to show you how much better than you I am. He says, I need you to see how much power I have so that all broken people can and need to come to the same God to be made equally whole. And how do we do this? He says in the last 3 verses of this, verses 20 through 22, you shall fear the Lord your God. You shall serve him. You shall hold fast to him. That means go to him as quickly as possible. And by his name, you shall swear. He is your praise. He is your God who has done for you these great and terrifying things that your eyes have seen. Your fathers went down to Egypt with 70 people. And now the Lord your God has made you as numerous as the stars in heaven. This is incredible. Jesus is saying, I am that. I have infinite power, but I'm going to deliver everybody who does not have power. I am is a powerful statement. And we need to know just how powerful he is and how much he is worthy of our time, attention, and lives. Which leads to our final point. I am, is, and will always be worthy. Michaela and I got married in March, and our wedding is in like a week and a half, which sounds like a confusing statement, but Corona is confusing. So we had to cancel our wedding. We got married in her parents' living room, and now we're actually having like a big party or whatever with everybody in like a week and a half. And she picked out a song by a band, no joke, called Shane and Shane. probably a great band, called Is He Worthy? And I could sing it for you. I was singing it earlier just because it was stuck in my head. That wasn't on purpose. But there's like, yeah, Naomi is just publicly insulting me. But I have a clip of it. It's like 10 seconds long. There's a little fast forward in the middle of it. Can we play that? There it is. I just fast forwarded it. Yeah, is he worthy? Is he worthy? He is. He is. Chris Tomlin did not do a remix. He actually wrote it. They did a remix. Jesus is obsessed with communicating that he and God are one. He said, I need you to know that me and God are one. Jesus needs us to know that he is Yahweh because it's not hard to understand that Yahweh is worthy. Most of the time, we have no reservation saying that the God who created space and time, Adam and Eve, ice cream and waterfalls, has authority over us and is worthy of being praised. But what do we think about Jesus? When he says something, literally another human being is before us, and he tells us something. Do we take it as seriously as the God who spoke and the earth existed? Is he just a really, really good dude? Or is he Yahweh? Is he the same God who has always existed? We may not ever say it, but we may live our lives like we believe, like that we don't actually believe what Jesus teaches is as seriously as this same God. This is huge implications for us. He says to the Pharisees, if you truly knew God, then you would know me, but you don't know God, so you need to know me. Their expectations of how powerful Jesus is, how much he is going to change their lives, and how much he is worth sacrificing everything else for just wasn't big enough. And Jesus says it clear as day, I am right here, right now, so that you can see how powerful God is and how powerless you are and how much you need him. He says in John chapter 8, verse 47, whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. If you are of God and believe in him, you'll open your eyes to what he's teaching you through me. Jesus is like, at some point or another, I can't make it any clearer. I told you I'm the bread of life. You didn't understand it. I told you I'm the light of the world. You really didn't get it. I am Yahweh. I am the God who has always existed. Believe what I'm saying and submit to it, or you're toast. And there are two responses that we can have to this. I love it. We see the first response is that the Pharisees basically just say, hey, you're making a good case, but we're just going to insult you. We're going to say no thanks. They actually said right here, they said, okay, you know that we're actually of Abraham. They're arguing with him and whatnot. And then we get to verse 48. The Jews answered him, are we not right in saying that you are Samaritan and have a demon? Jews basically thought they were better than Samaritans. They were racist towards Samaritans. And they're basically insulting Jesus and like, hey, we're a better race than you, right? And they're also saying that you have a demon inside of you, which I feel is pretty self-explanatory. Like you don't have power over demons and you're talking so much against the God that we made up in our minds that we're just going to say that you're demon possessed. They belittle who Jesus is. They deny that he's worth believing and selling out for. They decided to be a part of the majority crowd. They decided to be part of the 95+% that ultimately end up killing Jesus, even though they were praising him 7 days later, or 7 days earlier. The second group of people jump to John chapter 10, and Jesus literally says the same thing. He says, I and God are one. And we see their response 12 verses later. And many believed in him there. You have two very distinct responses. Jesus says, I am Yahweh. People literally insult him and try to throw rocks at him and kill him. The other side of the aisle, 2 chapters later, he says, hey, I am Yahweh. They believe in him. That's about as black and white as it can get. Those are the two options. I'd love to break it down more, but this is how it's spelled out to us by Jesus' best friend who knows him better than anybody else. So I don't want to try to elaborate more than his best friend already did. Your one option is Jesus is right, but I don't want him. Your other option is Jesus is right. Whoa, that means I need to do something different. I need to believe that. And we already established believing something is not just agreeing with it. It's saying, I agree that LeBron James can dunk a basketball. I'm going to let him do it over me. Maybe this I am who created me, who existed before me and will exist after me, knows better than I do. I'm talking about more than salvation. Yes, it is salvation, but this is also putting everything we believe about life in general, about anything specific in our lives, to the fire to see if the I am actually supports it or would have us submit to it. And I want us to think about that. Think about that. I'm going to pray right now, but I want you to pray basically that God, there's actually probably one of my favorite prayers in the New Testament is Paul says, Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. Like, God, I want to embrace you more. I want to help follow you more, but I cannot do that without your power. So I want you to pray that specifically in your life, honestly think of something specific in your life. I'm going to pray. You don't have to listen to a word I'm saying, but I'm going to pray for each of you, and then we'll be done. Does that sound good? Cool. Father God, thank you so much for your word. Thank you that you sent your son to be equal with you and teach us things that we could understand only through another human being explaining it. God, that's incredible. Help us never to take that for granted. Help us to never belittle how incredibly powerful and important you are. And God, thank you so much that you have made it so that each of these students would be here tonight and learn this from your word. That is awesome. God, help us to not just nod our heads to this, help us not to just have listened for the last 30 minutes or so and said, yeah, that was good that we learned from the Bible, and then do nothing with it. God, give us the power to live this out. Lord, help these students to believe and help them where they struggle with unbelief. And God, thank you so much for who you are, and thank you for giving us the power to live out your word. God, thank you so much for each of these students. In your son's name, amen.